Hello, my name is Sofia and this is my first evidence. On the 1st of January 1994, which was the same day that the Free Trade Agreement came into force, there were armed indigenous uprisings in southern Mexico led by the Zapatista National Liberation Army, better known as the EZLN. The origin of these uprisings can be traced back to December of 1993, when the EZLN, under the lead of Subcomandante Marcos, emitted the first declaration of the Lacandon jungle, in which they stated how the indigenous people were a product of slavery and had been oppressed for years by North American imperialism and the power dynamics in Mexico. They expressed the neglect they felt for the Mexican state, which had not cared about their territories, work, livelihood, education, or healthcare system. By adhering to Article 39 of the Political Constitution of the United Mexican States, the EZLN group sought sovereignty, autonomy, and self-determination. In this declaration, they also established their enemies and declared war on the Mexican Federal Army. In this sense, the EZLN rose up in arms in a cry for justice, so the voices of indigenous people in Mexico could be heard. However, the Mexican state did not see it this way, and in fact, it attempted to criminalize the movement. Former Mexican President Ernesto Zedillo even went on to state that the EZLN was not an indigenous group, but rather a guerrilla group derived from the Forces of National Liberation, created in 1969, and that advocated in favor of armed conflict to overthrow political power. In this sense, the Mexican state clearly lacked the skills for a successful intercultural dialogue to take place, because instead of being open to dialogue, it criminalized the group and didn't decide to start dialogue until the national and international communities pressured it to seek peace in 1994. In March 1995, the Congress of Union approved the law for dialogue and conciliation and peace dignity in Chiapas. It was published by Ernesto Zedillo, and it allowed to formally establish tables of dialogue and discussion to agree on the terms for the reestablishment of peace in the entity. Despite the promises made, a lasting mutual agreement wasn't reached. For this first evidence of the course, we went back in time to somewhere between 1994 and 1996 and simulated an intercultural dialogue between international organizations, the EZLN, and the Mexican state. Some of the main arguments, interests, and motivations of the main actors were: first of all, throughout the dialogue, some of the main arguments of the EZLN group were that the rights of indigenous people across Mexico have been violated for decades by the Mexican government, that a unified a nation under a single state went against their existence, and that they should have the right to self-determination and regain full control of their territories. They stated all of this arguments in the declaration of the Lacandon jungle and declared war on the Mexican Federal Army. Their interests and motivations were having an equal standing and that their basic needs and rights were guaranteed. On the other hand, one of the main arguments of the Mexican state was the principle of being a nation state, in which Mexico acknowledged being a multicultural country, but not a multinational. And it expressed that every citizen had the same rights and they should all unite to be the country of Mexico. This argument comes after multiple declarations from Mexican leaders and their desire to preserve peace and to unite the country. For example, Carlos Salinas mentioned that the force of peace is immensely greater than the ability of damage of any aggressive and invasive group. Viewed this way, the Mexican state kept building this idea of Mexican nationalism, in which Mexico could be multicultural but not a multinational state. Put into practice, this argument lacked an intersectional perspective and simply neglected the indigenous people's needs and rights, and instead focused on the Mexican state's interests, which were to preserve its image within the international community and use resources at its whim. The main argument of international organizations was that human rights had been violated during the confrontations. For example, Amnesty International emitted a news service document calling on Mexican authorities to ensure full respect of the human rights of the populations in Chiapas. The International Red Cross gave medical assistance to the wounded during the uprisings. In general terms, the main interest of international organizations was to seek for peace and act as a mediator between both parties so that intercultural dialogue could take place. To sum up, the Mexican state lacked the skills for a successful intercultural dialogue to take place, and although some agreements were made, not all of the terms were respected. Therefore, acknowledging that interculturality and cultural diversity enrich our country and our world, I propose another solution for the EZLN conflict. First of all, I believe that communication is key, and both parties must be willing to participate once more in intercultural dialogues mediated by international organizations, where they can express their concerns in a respectful way and work together towards achieving an equitable society. Tools for developing intercultural competencies, such as story circles, can be used as well. Second of all, indigenous people in Mexico have historically been oppressed and silenced by the effects of colonialism. Indigenous peoples have a voice, and their voice must be heard. Therefore, I suggest implementing affirmative action policies, in which the Mexican state verifies that there is a proportional percentage of indigenous people in Congress. In conclusion, the main actors must continue working together toward achieving a more peaceful and equitable society, and in which coloniality can be mitigated through social justice. Thank you. And these are my references. Thank you.